In life, we all encounter obstacles, and those obstacles come in all different shapes, sizes, and forms. The question is, how do we handle those obstacles? Do we attack them head on, or do we allow them to make us quit? Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up on themselves, their dreams, or their goals. We will interview successful people from all walks of life as they share their no-quit stories when they had the choice to give up or give in, but they didn't. We thank you for listening, and we hope to be that jolt of positivity as you go for your greatness. Welcome to episode number 199 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is hope. Our quote of the day comes to us from Robert H. Schuller. Let your hopes, not your hurts, shape your future. Today's episode is sponsored by the good people over at West Fair Communications, who publish the Westchester County Business Journal and the Fairfield County Business Journal. These newspapers do a wonderful job in covering all aspects of the business world within two of the most influential markets in the New York metropolitan area. You can also take advantage of their daily news feeds, which keep track on the companies and thought leaders in these important regions. For more information, take a look at www.westfaironline.com. Trust me, once you start reading, you won't quit. It is such an honor to bring you today's episode. Although I only recently met today's guest, he and I immediately connected, and we are currently working on some very exciting projects together. Mack is an incredible individual that is paying it forward by providing hope to others in such an honest and vulnerable way. His spirit and positive approach towards life is absolutely inspiring. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Lucas, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Appreciate you having me on, and appreciate being on.
I appreciate it. So the first question I ask everybody is, are you ready to bring it today?
Let's go. Let's get it going.
All right. So the number one objective of our show is to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up. And I know you have a great no-quit story of your own, and I just wanted to ask if you wouldn't mind sharing that with our listeners.
Yeah. First of all, I love what you're doing. I love the concept. Unfortunately, a lot of people are quitting. And one of, not just quitting their jobs, quitting, in particular things, but people are quitting on life. And, that was what happened to me. I grew up, severely abused and, grew up in a house where on the outside, everything looked good. Everything, looked like the perfect family, but behind closed doors, it was anything but. And led to a lot of confusion, led to a lot of depression. And so at the age of 20, I had tried to kill myself, tried to drive off a bridge and in my life. And thankfully I didn't. And I mean that not in any way making fun of that. I'm thankful that I didn't die that night when I was 20 years old. And since then I've been on this journey. It's been 17 years since that night. And I have been on a journey to understand what healing is and what purpose truly is and what life really is about and why we're here. And so my story has been one where on the outside it looked like I had everything together, but on the inside I had anything but. And it was dark places I've been in many times, but now I love life and I love people, and I'm on a mission to see hurting people get healed and healed people go out and heal another. I think there's a lot of hurt. There's a lot of hurt that gets masked with workaholism or whatever facade it might be, alcohol, drugs, pornography, addiction to whatever. People are stuffing a lot of pain down, and now I'm on this mission to stand in the gap for people. And hopefully as I share my story, it gives a lot more, especially men or specifically men, the permission to see someone that's strong, someone that's, married and has broken the cycle of child abuse and addiction in his life, to say, hey, doesn't matter what you've gone through. It doesn't matter what's happened to you, as ugly and dark and gnarly and shameful as things can be, have been. There's nothing that's too dirty that you cannot be clean. And there's nothing that you've done or nothing that's been done to you that you can't forgive or be forgiven. forgiven from. And just giving people hope, man. That's been my no quit story. Is I was raised in the darkness, and it took a long time to really figure out what light was. But once I figured it out, and I want everyone to experience it.
Well, I appreciate you being completely open, and the word I kind of want to, I guess, follow up with that is vulnerable. And I think you're sharing that with me and with our listeners, it shows who you are. And I think your mission is incredible. And as you know, I'm on the same mission in the sense with you in regards to paying it forward. And I think the best part about this show is, again, getting to connect with some amazing people such as yourself, but more importantly is the whole concept and idea. And I know you and I spoke about it when I had the honor of being on your show, is it's paying it forward. And for some people, that's monetary. For some people, it's something as simple as holding a door open. But for a lot of other people, it's the emotional, and it's the spiritual, and it's what I call the sweat equity. So I truly appreciate you doing that. So speaking of your podcast, wanted to just ask you if you wouldn't mind giving our listeners just a quick minute about who you are and what exactly you do.
Yeah, thanks. So I have a diverse background. I host two podcasts. One, the podcast you were on, which I'm excited for that episode to go live. It's called The Golden Rule Revolution, where inspiration and purpose come from treating people like people and nothing less. I think it's truly revolutionary today in our society to treat another human being the way we would want to be treated and desire to be treated, amidst the political rhetoric and excuse me, the news and all that can seem to divide us. We need to remember that we're just talking to human beings with the same dreams and desires that we have to have a better life. And so that podcast, I bring people all walks of life together, and we just talk about the beauty of humanity and talk about their stories and hear the trials and the tribulations and the overcoming the adversity. And it's just really a beautiful podcast. And then I host another podcast that I started just a few months ago called The Vulnerable Hero. And I'm redefining, I don't like the word vulnerable to mean exposure to hurt or exposure to pain. I reject that concept. I actually think vulnerability is the courage to experience love in its purest form. That's how I'm redefining it. And I think that the more vulnerable we are, the more empowered we are to stand in the face of shame and stand in the face of accusations or whatever it may be, right or wrong, whether they're justified or not. When we stand in the power of our vulnerability and we don't react, but we stand as leaders and take authority in our lives, that's how the world begins to heal. So that podcast has been a real heartfelt mission for me. And so my professional journey, I own a branding agency. I've had that for 11 years and, work with companies all over the country and won awards and had accolades and I've had some really good success in that. Before I started my branding agency, as a broadcast TV journalist, I was a TV reporter in different markets in Seattle and San Antonio, Texas, and middle of nowhere, America, in small markets. And just taking my love of people and telling stories and helping people share their stories to a new platform now with the podcast.
I think it's so neat how you use the word vulnerable, and I love how you're redefining it. And for me, maybe a little bit spin on it, very similar, I feel. But I think being vulnerable is actually being incredibly strong, and I think it's grasping, and it's putting your arms around the willingness to admit that you need help or guidance, or you want to change, or you want to get better. You fill in the words, but I think it's looked at from the outside as somebody says, as you mentioned in your definition, that you want to change, is when you hear the word vulnerable, you assume weakness, and you assume right. Someone that quote unquote is at fault. And for me, I actually look at it completely the opposite. Is if you and I are having a conversation and I said, look, Lucas, I want to be really vulnerable with you for a minute. I need help on launching my podcast, or I know you're a successful author. Or I need your guidance, or I need your mentorship in regards to this. So I love what you're doing with that aspect of it, and I think it's amazing because so many men out there look at, I believe, being vulnerable as weakness, and they don't want to admit that they're not a tough guy and everything's perfect. So I love that. But we can definitely touch on that maybe possibly down the road. But I want to get into a couple other things with you because I think you have a lot to offer our listeners. And wanted to ask you, if you had to define yourself, but you could only use one word, what would that word be?
Oh man, that's good. That's a fun question. The word love. Word love. I hope on my gravestone someday when I'm done on this earth that people know that I loved them. And I want my kids to know that I stood for love of people, all types of people, black, white, gay, straight, whatever label or category that people want to fall in, that just loved them. So yeah, the word love.
No, I think that's awesome. And as you and I spoke about on your show, for me, it's something that we talk about is hate never wins. And we've used the hashtag love over hate and just things like that. And I think it's also goes in essence hand in hand with the whole concept of being vulnerable is people, I feel, don't use the word love because it's kind of mushy or soft. But I actually look at it and I feel that's very powerful to tell people that you love them. So I'm glad you mentioned that. So one of the questions we ask always has an interesting answer, but I wanted to ask you, how do you define or what does success look like for you?
Success for me is equivalent to legacy. And I look at what legacy are we leaving behind for future generations to steward them well. That's what success is to me. So I look at 5 categories. For me, being a husband first, second, being a father, third, being healthy, both in mind, body, and soul. Fourth is career, which I used to have as my first. I used to be a workaholic and I collapsed, went to the ER and the ambulance, and I was just a mess. So I've been intentional to put my career as number 4, and then number 5, the thing that I define legacy is friendship, and putting a tribe of people around you that you trust and that don't judge you and that you feel safe enough to share your deepest, darkest secrets. Because one of the things referring to success is I think that a lot of people, specifically men, I would say, hold a lot of secrets, and we think that we're going to take this secret to the grave. And whatever secret we think we're taking to the grave, I think that's where our dreams are buried. And so guys get frustrated. If people get frustrated, why am I not living the life that I want to live? Why am I not experiencing the success and the freedom and the achievements that I know I could be experiencing? And I believe it's because we bury these secrets and we live with this unneeded burden and trauma that we don't need to. If we live free, if we tell the truth makes us free, if we open up and we're around people that don't judge us and love us and support us, then man, having powerful friendships is more, I think, important than having family around, because those friendships actually replace the word family. So to me, success looks like having a powerful legacy in that order: family, husband, father, health, career, and then friendships.
I think it's really neat how you went a little step further from the legacy component. I think it's such a fun question, and the reason we ask it is because you get different answers. So speaking of leaving your legacy, and I know you and I spoke about a lot of things on your show, wanted to see if you're reading anything currently or if you've read something recently you'd like to recommend to any of our listeners.
And you asked me, I love that question. I told you I'm reading this history book. I read 3 books at a time. I try to read a history book, political or religious book, and then some sort of autobiography or biography book. So I just finished, about a month ago, I finished David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me.
That was great book.
Oh, man, I'm still fired up just thinking, just saying his name gets me fired up. And I just finished The Mask of Masculinity by Lewis Howes. Finished that a couple months ago. That was really good. And I'm reading Rumi, reading a whole bunch of the Sufi poet. I'm reading a lot of Rumi right now, and so that's the other book I'm reading is The Essential Rumi, and he just has a lot of just beautiful perspectives on life, love, purpose, wisdom. And so that's the religious book I'm reading. And I read a lot. I love reading, and I like reading 3 different types of books at the same time because it keeps me stretching, it keeps me growing. When I said mind, body, soul for health, I really look at it that I'm trying to feed the soul as much as I'm trying to feed my mind and my body. So yeah, The Essential Rumi I'm reading, and Can't Hurt Me. I think everyone needs to pick that book up. It's phenomenal.
So I got to ask a different question here. So Jocko Willink versus David Goggins, who wins in a fight?
Okay, so I'm going Jocko all the way. When he gets up at 3:15 this morning, I saw his Instagram post said make time, and he's working out 3:15. I think both those guys are amazing men. But anyone that's a black belt in jiu-jitsu is probably going to take the day.
All right, I'm gonna take the political pass here because I've been trying to get both of those gentlemen on my show. So I would say that it would be a complete draw, and neither would win.
I love it. Well played. Well played.
So speaking of Jocko's 3:15 wake up time, I wanted to ask Lucas if you have a morning routine that you swear by.
I do. So I call the 5 o'clock hour the magic hour. There is something special. I don't know. I mean, special doesn't probably describe it well enough. There's something that it happens at that hour. I just think historically, I look at people, successful leaders, they get up at 4 a.m. They get up between 4 and 6. Definitely they're at the routine at the 5 o'clock hour. And man, just they get a lot done, and they think, I think, more deeply. And so I get up in between 5 and 6, depends what I'm doing the night before, because I try to give myself a max of 6 hours or a minimum of 6 hours. But so I get up and then I run through gratitudes. The very first thing that I say before I even get out of bed is this Hebrew prayer that it's called the Moedani. And when I heard about it, it changed my complete perspective on having gratitude, waking up with gratitude. And I don't know how to say it in Hebrew, but the English translation is, I thank you, O living and eternal King, for returning my soul within me with compassion and loving kindness, for great is your faithfulness. And you don't have to be religious to take that and think, man, just to be grateful to have your soul in your body. That's what struck me. Like when I wake up, I don't take for granted that I wake up. So I say that before I get out of bed every morning. And then I run through my affirmations, and then I read, and then I go work out. So I get that order. I try to feed my soul, try to feed my mind, and then I get after it with the body.
You know, you mentioned the 5 o'clock hour. You should try the 4 o'clock hour. There's much more magic in that hour, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't want to burst your bubble, but the 5 a.m. hour is really magical, but the 4 a.m. is just, it's life changing. So I'm gonna call you tomorrow morning and wake you up.
Okay, let's get it. I accept that. I'll take that call.
So if you could go back and give the 20-year-old version of yourself one piece of advice, now assuming the 20-year-old version would have listened, what would that have been?
It's you don't have to prove your worth. The thing that matters most is your emotional health. You don't have to prove your worth, and the thing that matters most is your emotional health.
That's good advice. I appreciate that. Now, if I could wave a magical wand and allow you to have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Man, I love these questions. Man, I would love to sit down with Abraham Lincoln, and I would love to discuss with him. I mean, more 620,000 people died in the American Civil War. That just got surpassed in the past few years with all wars combined in the U.S. More people died in the American Civil War than almost all wars combined in U.S. history. And that was not even a fully formed country. And what was he really thinking, with the reconciliation? I mean, he really talked about charity and benevolence and the country. This is what I think is so wild about our country. It's with all its flaws, and because people are flawed, the southern states aren't second-class citizens. That we fully integrated back the Confederate States, and that's an incredible leader, I think, to do that. So I'd love to sit down and talk to him about how, why, what was he thinking, what was going on, because he essentially made the ultimate sacrifice.
Now, we are almost 200 episodes into our show, and the number one answer to that question is actually Abraham Lincoln.
Really?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because obviously Lincoln fits with the whole no quit theme and motto and mission, and basically politically he lost everything, including family members and a child, and what he did was he obviously ended up becoming the president of the United States. But when you look at somebody that quote unquote should have given up after not one, not two, but so many different political defeats, he just epitomizes what it means to not quit. And I think it would be an amazing dinner. So want to change lanes here for a minute. And I know that you are somewhat active on social media, and I was curious if there's anybody famous that you look up to on social media and follow, and I just wanted to see get your opinion on that.
There's some accounts I really like. I think for different verticals, I like different people. I from the athletic world, I love Shaq. I love following Shaq, and I think one of the things that he does really well is he doesn't take himself too serious, and he seems like he's always having fun, and he's having fun with himself and being this larger than life human being. So I like following his stuff. Just seems lighthearted and genuine. But I follow a lot of like these psychologist accounts or spiritual accounts where they're just giving good quotes, lessons, and it's more, there's not a personality per se. It's just these accounts that I follow, and I just love following them. I
got to put you on the spot. Is there any one that you could recommend?
Yes, let me pull it up. It's called Spiritual. I like Spiritual Teachers of Our Time, and I don't always agree with everything they post, but it's not even about agreeing. It's just about learning. Like yesterday, love is the process of inclusion. Once I include you as a part of me, I will be to you just the way I am to myself. And some dude. I was just like, yeah, I like that. Love is a part of inclusion.
That's awesome. And I think it's always interesting. And the reason we started asking that question is a lot of our guests follow different people for different reasons. And to your point, want to always provide that to our listeners is if you're looking for something different, and whether or not you are a big basketball fan or not, Shaq does just share a lot of things, and he's obviously very visible. But to your point, he went back and got his PhD after playing. He's made an insurmountable amount of money, but he pays it forward in his own little ways. And I think to your point about him being lighthearted and having fun, that's the reality of what our world and our country is not about. Everything is unbelievably serious. And don't get me wrong, I'm not in any way saying there's not time to be serious. There 100% is and are very important times to be serious. But the reality is we all take way too many things way too serious. And I think for somebody like that, if they can share or impart a joke or some humor, and Shaq puts up crazy quotes and videos and pictures and stuff, but to your point, it makes people laugh. And one of the people that I love to follow is The Rock, and the reason I like following The Rock is he's just real. I mean, he uses some tough language sometimes, but what you get from him is you get who he is, and he doesn't change, and he's been successful on the football field. He's been successful on the ring and on the big screen, and it's because he connects with people. So I'm glad you shared that. But wanted to to ask you, and as you know, because I was a guest on your show, the big thing we talk about all the time is accountability. And I wanted to ask you, what does accountability mean to you?
Man, accountability for me is staying on the path. It's I find if I don't meet regularly with some very close friends and have regular updates and check-ins, for me, it's very easy to slip a little bit on my goals. And so accountability is first being integrity with myself, but that doesn't mean I'm following through. That means I'm aware when I'm not, and then reaching out for some support. But also having that regularly scheduled, every Wednesday I get together with my buddies and we call it the 5. We talk about those 5 topics of legacy and share straight up, like, this is what I'm struggling with. Here's our goals. And we always have 30-day plans, what in those categories, what success looks like in those 30-day plans, and what's the tactics we're going to have to accomplish that. So I know where I'm at, I have my North Star, and then I know if I'm veering off the path.
That's awesome. And so obviously in some ways I would assume that those are your accountability partners.
Yes. Yep. And crucial without it, in fact, I was just talking to a guy this morning. We were talking about intermittent fasting and without that accountability, it's very difficult for me. I don't know for everyone. I'm always amazed at people that are self-regulated and have that grit and discipline where they can really stay the course without someone. But for me, especially when it comes to the health component, the mind, body, soul, for me, it's really helpful to have that accountability partner.
That's awesome. And I love how you touched upon is the importance of consistently doing it and having it. And I myself have a couple of accountability partners that I meet with either in person or over the phone. And for me, it's also the non-scheduled check. And so, for example, you do yours every Wednesday. Not that that's too much or too little, but for me, a lot of my accountability partners will just shoot out text messages or group texts along during the week. And to your point, it's just one of those things where you have that check and say, hey, how are you doing? And asking questions. And I think it's awesome because for what your group represents, it's talking about, again, the magical word of being vulnerable. So as you know, because we speak about it quite often, we're on a pay it forward mission. And I know you're on this as well as with what you do, but what does it mean, or what does pay it forward mean to you?
I had this incredible experience the other day at the grocery store. So I was, this guy he was next in line and he had all his groceries on the conveyor belt. And I was standing behind him, wasn't really paying attention. I just went in to buy a gift card for a birthday dinner I was going to later that night. And he's like, go ahead. I'm like, no, it's okay. And he's like, go ahead. And I said, I appreciate that. And I did go ahead and step in front of him. And I was like, what's your name? And he said, Sean. I'm like, hey, Sean, thank you. I really appreciate you doing that. And so I'm about to go through up to the checker and I hear him do the same thing to another guy. He's like, go ahead. You only got something small. And he did it to another guy. And I was like, Sean, thank you. Like, that's incredible. And the checker goes, man, there's a lot of love in my line right now. And I said, there is a lot of love. I said, Sean just started a ripple effect. And that was just a simple act that cost him maybe 2 minutes extra of time, but greatly impacted me for the rest of the evening. And I'm talking about it on your podcast, and he'll never know that I'm talking about this, and everyone listening will hear it and it will touch their lives. And that was such a simple gesture, and that was paying it forward in ways that man will never know. And paying it forward is, I think I talk about the ripple effect. We all are making a ripple effect every single day with every action we make, whether it's more positive or negative. That's up to us. And so paying it forward for me, whether it be a monetary, it's just a gesture. It's an intention to make a more positive ripple effect. And, then we can, I joke around, we can Mahatma Gandhi this bad boy and be the change we want to see.
That's an awesome story. And the best part about it for me is it wasn't a person spending $50 or $100 or buying your gift card or doing something that is extremely out of the ordinary or extravagant or expensive, but it was something that was just simple, basic human kindness, where he said, okay, this guy behind me has one thing. He's buying a gift card and I have, 20 things, and it's going to take me longer to pack. And you know what? Go ahead. But then the best part is, you're going through and you hear Sean do the exact same thing for the person behind you. So those are the things that, and the coolest part about the story is what you said kind of near the middle to the end of it was that had a positive impact on your life and on the other person's life. But more importantly, you've told the story, and now you're telling the story on my podcast, and that's the whole concept behind what we love about paying it forward, because if you pay it forward, the reality is it gets paid forward to other people by other people. So I think that's absolutely awesome. And, those are the things we talk about when we kind of do the wrap up at the end of the show is our CTAs, our calls to action. And a lot of the times, we just say something simple like that. Hey, I challenge everybody today to do something for somebody else with zero expectations in return. So I'm really glad you touched on that. Wanted to see if I could grant you the ability to magically fast forward 1 year from now and you could have accomplished any one goal. What would that goal be?
The goal would be a year from now that my book is out. I'm speaking across the country, and a movement has started to see people truly experience the power of healing, emotional healing, not physical healing, but truly the Vulnerable Hero tour is going to every city and filling arenas. I think in a non-religious context whatsoever, but what Billy Graham did for decades, filling stadiums, tens of thousands of people would come and, have an experience of their time. I think this next year, there's another awakening happening where people are starving for a sense of healing and knowing themselves and unpacking the pain and the secrets and the trauma, and actually, for the first time in their life, experiencing unconditional love so that they can bring forth their truth, resulting in their personal freedom. So I would love it a year from now, me as the guy coming to a city near you, filling stadiums and seeing the movement happen, and just have, I was talking to someone, I'm giving a TED talk soon, and I talk about there's all these statistics of abuse. I mean, I was abused. There's all these statistics of abused people, trauma, suicide rate. I mean, all the negative, there's all these statistics. And I want to see a statistic of more healed people. And can you imagine if, like, today on the news, the planet's healing statistic has risen from 57% to 59%. And then a couple months later, it's risen to 6. I mean, could you imagine if we started tracking the healed cases, people that were hurt and then became healed? And so that is, man, a year from now, that's what I'm standing for.
That's awesome, and I would love to be standing next to you at some stage around locally, because I think I just love what you talk about. And I just wanted to share just a quick story with our listeners. Lucas and I actually connected via social media, and the reason I say that is one of the things I've often spoken about on the show is the idea of 6 degrees of separation. But today's day and age, with technology, with different websites and apps and things like that, you are 1 degree separated from that person. So I will actually challenge our listeners today. If there's something that you want to do, there's somebody you want to connect with, there's a business idea, a concept, a book, a podcast, whatever, you are 1 degree separated from somebody. And Lucas and I are a perfect example, because I actually reached out to Lucas initially. He then invited me on his show. He's now obviously on my show, and it was 1 degree separated. But I just got to tell you, brother, that I'm on your bus. I'm in your tribe, and I'm in your corner. And I think what you're doing is awesome. So to follow that up, I wanted to ask you if you wouldn't mind just telling our listeners what's the best way for them to connect with you, follow you, as well as getting your podcasts, as in plural.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for saying that, brother. I'm honored, and I just stand with you shoulder to shoulder and locked armed. And thank you. And thank you for having me on. For people listening, there's a lot of ways to connect with me, and I encourage everyone, and please reach out to me, even if you want to just download your story. I listen to a lot of people's stories, and it's a safe space just to have someone that'll listen. But you can find me on lucasmack.com. You can go to my website. My podcasts are on all the podcast platforms. iTunes is, the most popular. It's the Golden Rule Revolution, and it's the Vulnerable Hero, or you can search my name in the search bar. And then follow me on Instagram. That's another platform that I put a lot of content out on Instagram that I don't put anywhere else. And write a lot of songs, as Chris and I were talking about, and put music out there. And I just, I watched a really good interview with Will Smith, and he was talking about him and his brother used to have to build this wall that his dad owned, like a drugstore or some store when he was a kid. And he said, if I looked at, I have to redo this whole wall, it felt overwhelming, but he focused on one brick at a time. And I just love that concept that, I'm not trying to be famous, or I'm not trying to have this massive following, but what I am focusing on is laying a brick at a time. And so every piece of content I put out there, I just feel like, okay, here's another brick. And, it's connected with, thankfully, people and even if it doesn't, I'm still laying bricks.
No, I love, that's actually an awesome video. And Will Smith is somebody that I've admired as far as his acting career. But what I actually love about Will Smith, and he's someone similar to The Rock in the sense of he's putting out content. But I love what you shared about one brick at a time, because that's the same thing that we try to do, and that's why you and I have connected. But wanted to ask you, Lucas, before we let you go, because we could probably go for another 2 or 3 hours, is if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners.
Yeah, you said the word love, and I acknowledge that the word love has become bastardized, and it's become completely tarnished, and where it's lost its meaning. But the original, just reference the Hebrew word for love is ahava, which means to give. It constantly gives, and love is constantly giving. So anything that takes from us, even if it was in the name of love, takes from us our joy, takes from us our sense of safety or security or well-being, or takes a relationship or whatever takes from us, it wasn't love. And where real love is present, our truth will inevitably come forth, resulting in our personal freedom. And I want everyone to experience freedom. And I just want to kind of make a stand for love, that love is not an emotional, make you feel awkward or weird or uncomfortable or dirty. Love is a freeing, giving, powerful force that empowers us to live our highest and best self. So that's why I just encourage everyone to really, see things for what they are, and don't let an imitation rob you of the sense of what truly authentic living can be.
There's probably no better way than I could follow up with that, is just to, again, thank you for your time, what you share with us. And our listeners, I would recommend definitely check out either of Lucas's 2 podcasts, but check him out on Instagram as well. And thank you, my man, for being on the show.
Brother, thank you. It's been awesome.
Thank you for listening to episode number 199. Lucas Mack is on a mission, and that mission is to help other people heal. And the way he is doing that is through vulnerability and love. One thing that Lucas mentioned was that how being vulnerable actually empowers us, and I could not agree more. He spoke about one of our favorite topics, accountability partners. I know I've touched upon this quite often, but if anybody's interested or has any specific questions about accountability partners, they can always reach out to me at chris@noquitliving.com. In his parting words, Lucas shared a Hebrew definition of love, which in essence he translated as to give. And he also shared a story about Will Smith, who was tasked with building a wall as a child with his brother. And the way he did it was one brick at a time. As we close out our episode today, our 199th, I challenge everyone to move forward, both with and through love, as opposed to hate, revenge, or negativity. We all can make a difference, and that difference can be a positive difference moving forward if we choose so. So as you go for your greatness today, do so with and through love. And to quote the Will Smith story, do it one person at a time, one day at a time, and one brick at a time. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.